Hello, folks. Um, I tried doing another method that I use in Fusion for creating parts or creating, in this case, two parts joined together called an assembly. And it was kind of clunky. So I want to go about it in the opposite direction that is afforded to me with Onshape that typically isn't done with Fusion. What we were doing in Fusion was called top-down design, where you open one workspace and you build both parts in it. Today in Onshape, I'm going to do what's called bottom-up design, where you design two parts separately and then join them together. So hopefully that makes some sense. And we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to create a document. I only need one document here. I'm going to call it bottom-up phone stand. And this is a different design technique than the previous one. All right, so where I'm pulling this from is in the file section. There is a document in the CAD files for a dimension drawing. So all of this is here. I'm printing them out so you can have them, but it is founded here, and this gives you hopefully all the dimensions you need for building this phone stand. So that's what I'm going to be referencing. So first thing I'm going to do is Part Studio 1. That's going to build what I'm calling my faceplate. So I'm going to select this front, P to get that plane, and then N to go normal to it. And I'm going to create a center point rectangle. So locking on there, and then 70 millimeters this way. And then part of the lesson was learning to use mixed units. Sometimes that does happen. So I'm putting in 6IN for the other dimension. You can't use the quotation mark, unfortunately. I wish they would let that happen. I've had a few times where I'm like, why won't this thing dimension? It's because I was using the quotation mark. Fusion does. All right, so now I'm going to do some sketch fillets here. I'm just going to round these corners. So it's going to be a dimension of 10 millimeters. And I'm going to round all four corners this way. And grab another two sides. And I'm clicking left, clicking left, click again, click once to set it, confirm it, and then hitting enter to do 10. All right, so that's the essentially most of the faceplate. Now let's create some legs here. I'm going to kind of zoom in a little bit. I'm going to do a 3-point arc, the A key, clicking here and here. So it's basically, if I turn this a little bit, you can see it's the, well, I guess you can't see. It's the ends of those fillets. When they finish up, that creates a little dot. So I'm going to use those dots to build this arc on. So I clicked on both of the dots, and then I'm going to radius this to 35. Now you'll notice this dimension goes out to here. That's because this radius is of a whole circle, and we're only using part of that circle or a section of that circle. You can click back on the front here again. All right, so that is essentially the whole shape. Now I just need to cut out those three little slots here that the legs will slot into and create our phone stand. All right, so for that, I'm going to create a line, and I'm not going to put it where it actually goes. I was talking about this in class. I put lines or any shape, typically I kind of don't draw them correctly. So that way, hit escape. So that way, when I dimension them, I know they're locked into place exactly where I want them. So this blue line right now is a solid line. I'm going to change that to a construction line. So that changes it to a dotted line. And this allows me to use it as a reference point without actually being part of the official sketch, as it were. So the laser cutter or whatever, 3D printer or any extrusions even won't see this. All right, so now I'm going to draw three corner rectangles just using this construction line as kind of a starting point. I'm going to draw them not anywhere near to scale. So again, so that way I know when they're correct, I got it. Oh, I forgot to dimension that line. So this let me back up here. I'm still in construction line mode. So let me dimension this first. This is going to go from here to the top of the phone faceplate to there. That's going to be 5 inches. All right, there we go. I was wondering why it was a little weird. All right, now we'll draw these corner rectangles. So notice now they're not dotted lines. I was wondering, I was like, well, I didn't wonder. I didn't even notice until I was done. All right, so 3 lines or 3 rectangles there. So now I'm going to dimension these. So this dimension from here to here is going to be 10 millimeter. Again, from here to here, 10 millimeter. And then from here to here, 10 millimeter. All right. Now, between them, actually, that's 10, 10, and 10. That makes 30, and this whole thing is 70. So that leaves me 40 millimeters to divide up 4 ways evenly. Well, even if you aren't a math major, here we go. 40 divided by 4, that leaves me with 10 on each. So I'm going to go 10 here. I'm going to go 10 here. And then 10 here. In class, somebody did this, and this is perfectly understandable. You want to dimension this one, but this one is not a dimension you actually need to give it. It'll actually, in my case, it does a shaded. His turned red. The reason it's shaded is because it was called a driven dimension. That 10 is not necessary because that's the only amount that it could be if I've used up all 60 for the rest of it. So that takes care of that dimension. I don't have to use it. All right, last thing. You may notice, let me hit escape here. These are locked in, or these two are locked into each other. I didn't want them to be, but okay. And then this one here, these are blue because they're not constrained. So I'm going to dimension them. And this is what we learned for today. This dimension here is not going to be an actual dimension, but a variable. I'm going to hit the hashtag and type in thickness. And this is going to create a variable, and it brings up a whole bunch of stuff here. So why is this a variable? Well, different acrylic that we cut this out of, or wood, or whatever we're cutting it out of, can have different thicknesses. So rather than putting in a dimension, and then if it doesn't work, I have to then find where I use all the dimensions again, and change them all. Rather than that, I'm grouping them all together as a single variable, and then I'll just create one dimension in that variable. In this case, 2.85 millimeter. Hit enter, and now that is 2.85 millimeter right there. This one was locked to this one. Typically, I'll show something like constraints, and I think it was this constraint here that is, well, it's not a horizontal. I want to say it was a collinear constraint. Not equal. Not sure where the collinear, maybe they're not even calling it collinear in Onshape, but either way, it locked in as well. I'm going to turn off constraints because it gets a little confusing. All right, last one, I'm going to dimension this one, hitting the D key. This one again. I'm not going to type in the number. I'm going to type in the hashtag or the pound sign, and then thickness, and hit enter. It seems to be, there it is. I was thinking about it for a second. I'm like, why is it worried about that? All right, so that is the faceplate. Last thing I need to do, let me finish my sketch here. Last thing I need to do is extrude this. I'm going to turn this on its edge a little bit using that top right front corner there. I like that corner for sketching or extruding stuff. I'm going to extrude this and just click this part. And now, same thing again. I'm going to use the thickness variable because that is the thickness of my acrylic. And I can change that at any time. So there we have it. That is the faceplate there. And I'm now going to right-click down here. Instead of Part Studio 1, I'm going to rename this as faceplate. Maybe Studio. All right. And I'm also going to click here, right-click this Part 1. I'm going to rename that as faceplate as well. So this allows me to know what this thing is because I'm going to make another studio now. If everything is called Part 1, it gets confusing when we go to put these together. All right, so I'm going to go down here, insert new element, the plus sign, create a part studio. All right, new part. This is going to be the legs. So what I'm going to be building is this part here using this sketch, and we will then assemble them when they're done. Before I was trying to make a sketch plane on there, and things got a lot confusing. So I'm going to rename this right now, Leg Studio. And let's go ahead and start a sketch. I'm going to start it on the top plate, normalize, lose those. And this one, Again, a center rectangle. I am going to go with, there's a few ways we could do this. I'm going to go again with 70. And in this case, I'm going to go with 60 for here. All right. I'm going to fillet those edges, just these two, the top ones, if you want to call them top, right here and here. I am also going to create that arc again here. This gives me legs. Oh, I did not get that click in there at just the right spot where I want to hit A, but I'm going to do it this way instead. Here and here. Pull this down again. It was 35. And I'm also going to create a circle here just to run like a power cord through if we need to, or just give it some visual flair. Something like that. All right. So that's essentially it. That builds most of this. Now I just need to create these little bump out legs here. So there's actually 3 of them. It's hard to see this one. There is one leg here. There's a little one that you can't see sticking through. I don't want it to stick through because if you're doing a charging cable, it won't be able to stick through there. And then this one, long one there. All right, so again, going to do a corner rectangle. And I am going to draw these not to scale. Oh, see that line that showed up there? I don't want that to happen, that dotted line. It was trying to like zoom in or lock in on something else. I want them to be, see that? I don't want that to happen. I want them to be their own rectangle, if that makes any sense. All right, let's dimension these again. From here to here is going to be, again, 10. From here, that's 10. And this could also be a variable too, but I'm just going to put them in. We'll do one variable for today, and that'll be enough. 10. 10. And lastly, 10. So now notice they are different lengths, but these are going to be different. So first one here, this one is going to be 20. And this one is going to be 20. This one only needs to stick through and go flush. So that is that variable thickness again, because it's only going to go through the faceplate. Oh, this doesn't know about the old variables because it's in another part. So I'll have to create this again. I do want to do it, even though it's just one. I want to be able to find it again. So if I need it, we could do that one. There's probably a way to link it to the other one, but I'm not that familiar with Onshape yet, so we'll just call it thickness for now. All right, last thing I would like to do, I want to fillet these edges, just these two here. I'm going to do a 2 for this one. Let me do 2 millimeter. Reason I want to do 2 millimeter makes it easier to insert those legs through invalid geometry because it's too much. All right, let's try that again. It's not happy with, it's trying to remember 10, I guess. All right, let's pull that back out there. And we'll do 2. Try that again here. Hopefully it remembers 2 now. Yes. It kept remembering 10 for some reason. And then 2. So these allow those forks or legs to stick through there and makes it easier to insert into the other piece of acrylic. All right, so that should do it. All right, so now we're not going to select this part. We're not going to select this part, but we do need to pick up these legs when I extrude it. So I'm going to extrude. I hate that it just does 25 each time because then it makes it hard to understand what's going on. But we want those 4 parts. And again, we're going to do thickness. All right, and click OK. So that is my legs. So I have now my faceplate here, my legs here, and now I'm going to create an assembly. So this is, as you can imagine, this is going to assemble them together. So right here, I need to insert the parts that I want. And you can see now why I name them makes it easier. And I can actually hit that chevron and just say faceplate. Only do it once, otherwise it brings in a few of them if you keep clicking again. Need to hit that chevron, hit that part. Now I forgot to name that part, so that's why it's saying part 1. All right, I'm just going to click somewhere and click OK. Now, this is a horrible phone stand, as you'll notice. It is just going by that origin. Remember, we built each of these kind of centered on the origin. So what I need to do now is tell it, hey, these legs need to go through this part here. I only need to do one part, so I'm actually going to use this rectangle here and say lock this to the front of this rectangle here. So that is a fastened mate. That's the most common one. There's no movement in these. It just kind of glues them together, if you will, digitally glue. So I'm going to click on that. And then I'm not clicking anything yet. I'm just hovering. But you can see it's like picking up all these geometries. And it's like, where do you want? So what I'm doing is I'm going to zoom in here. I want, you can do a lot of different ones, but I want that dead center of that rectangle there. And then now when I go to this one, trying to pick somewhere in the middle of air is really hard to do. In Fusion, you right click or hit Control, I think. In this case, you hit Shift. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on to kind of the corner here. I'm not clicking anything yet. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and that allows me now to move around an empty space and select that center there. So if you kind of see what's happened, it's locked that in place. And I'm going to go ahead and click Commit, which is kind of just yes. And now I have my phone stand. Let me just hit F to fit. And there is my completed phone stand. I can do this, and you can see it here. Thought that actually that other view was a little bit better, but nope, there we go. All right, so now last problem. We're running on 16 minutes here. We need these faces, and you're going to send me a DXF file of these faces. So if you want it laser cut, well, I have to grade them, but if you want it laser cut, I need those DXF files. That's what either Inkscape or Adobe Illustrator uses, and then they send it. The laser cutter essentially thinks that it's a big printer, so I send it from Inkscape into the laser cutter software, and it goes from there. All right, so back to the faceplate. This is the easiest part of the whole game. I'm going to right-click and don't click export, but right above it, export as a DXF. So I got my LUM faceplate, DXF, click export, and I'm going to save it in my files, click OK. Then I'm going to go into my Leg Studio, same thing, hover on the face, right-click, DXF export. If you do the other one, if you just click export, it has like, this is how we did the STL file, but you'll notice there is no way to find a DXF here. This is trying to do solid parts. So I'm going to right click and do export as DXF and then export that and save it there. And those two DXF files are what I will grade and what I will use for the laser cutting if you want it laser cut. So if you have any questions or issues, please stop by. Hopefully this made maybe more sense than the top-down design, the bottom-up, where we create two parts separately in two different studios and then bring them in as an assembly file when it's all said and done. So if you have any questions, please stop by Evans 127, or I will see you in class. Thanks.